Blessings, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into the channel today. I am Dane, host of RMG. Hope you're doing well wherever you may find yourselves, and welcome to the final episode in my little mini-series this month, celebrating the 50th anniversary of Rush. Originally, the series was supposed to be 6, 7, or 8 episodes, but I've whittled it down to 4, just because I've decided that some of the things that I was going to talk about regarding Rush are tied to other bands and that sort of thing, so it's just the 4. And today's topic, I think, is saving the best for last, and it is, what is Rush's legacy? So let's go ahead and jump right in. Let's start with popularity. They have sold 40 or 42, depending on your source, million records worldwide, so globally. 26 million records in the United States alone. They have sold 14 platinum and 3 multi-platinum albums in the United States. With respect to RIAA certification, they are third behind only the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. That's big company there. That says something about their popularity, right? Excuse me. Now, to add on to that, not only are they third behind the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, but specifically with respect to for most consecutive gold or platinum albums by a rock band. Their magnum opus, Moving Pictures, 4 times platinum in Canada, 5 times platinum in the United States. Next, they have a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. They're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They got in rather late, but they were in nonetheless. They have a huge influence on musicians and aspiring musicians. We talk about musicians and bands, Dream Theater, 9 Inch Nails, specifically Trent Reznor, Smashing Pumpkins, specifically Billy Corgan, Rage Against the Machine, Iron Maiden, Metallica, specifically Kirk Hammett, Porcupine Tree, a.k.a. Steven Wilson, Primus, Queensryche, Soundgarden, Tool, Alice in Chains, Anthrax, Foo Fighters, specifically Dave Grohl, Muse. Now, in addition to what I've said already, they have one of the best album runs, if not the best album run of all time. I'm still not sure where I am with respect to, do they have, I would say right now, if you had to, put a gun to my head, metaphorically speaking, I would say they're second after the Beatles. Anyway, they're also next with respect to what is their legacy. They are one of the most groundbreaking bands of all time because with respect to rock music, again, to quote Gene Simmons from Beyond the Lighted Stage, he goes, well, I'll just paraphrase. He says, when you hear Rush, when someone puts Rush on, it's Rush because it's Rush. In other words, they have that unique sound. No one else sounds like Rush, and so that lends so well to such a positive legacy. Now, when it comes to progressive rock, specifically within the overall aegis or umbrella of rock music and all its subgenres, they are progressive hard rock's finest. Perhaps, maybe even the only real progressive hard rock band. Maybe. They're different than Yes. They're different than Jethro Tull. They're different than King Crimson. They're different than Pink Floyd. They're different than Genesis, Kansas Sticks, etc. There's something magical about this trio, the dynamicness, if that's a word, of this band. Excuse me. Those other bands that I've mentioned, Yes, Tull, King Crimson, Pink Floyd, Genesis, Kansas Sticks, do they have a lot of songs that you can consider progressive hard rock? Hard rock maybe, progressive yes, but both combined, I'm not so sure. And again, I'm not saying this is definitive. This is something I'm still, but if so, that would definitely add to their legacy. Why are they so groundbreaking? Lyrics are just genius. Geddy's masterful technique, playing the bass, synthesizers, pedals, etc. Neil's craft, the palette that he uses. He brought so much to the table, even when he broadened his or enlarged even more his palette by bringing in electronic drums and that sort of thing. There's just a flair and a fierceness to what Neil and Geddy does with respect to the rhythm section. If we talk about Alex being part of a trio, he has only so much room to work with, and the wall of sound that he creates, and then sometimes in creating that wall of sound, he limits his other bandmates, so that this is just a dynamism between all three members of the band. His wall of sound, as I said, his technique, and his variations of style and tone. So variety when it comes to all three members of the band as individuals and as a whole, just the variety, the palette. There's something unprecedented with respect to Rush. And that gives them that legacy as well. Now, Rush can be tender and heavy and hard-hitting and passionate and emotive and heavy like you wouldn't believe in certain areas, right? We're not talking about extreme and death and new metal, but if you listen to the guitar solo of Presentation on 2112, wow. If you listen to the guitar solo on Free Will, if you listen to the bluesy yet heavy guitar solo on By Tor and the Snow Dog, just there's that heaviness, right? Just wow. And then when we talk about the other side of that, of the spectrum, songs like Tears and Ghost of a Chance and Entre Nous and Different Strings, all these different things that they do almost, if not flawlessly. So all over the place, and yet doing it so well, regardless of what subgenre within rock, if you will. Chemistry and synergy. There's no other band when it comes to chemistry and synergy. I think I'll talk about that more towards the end of the video. Next is all three of them, or right now actually, all three members of the band, Peart, Leifson, and Lee, good friends. And what cements their legacy more than other bands, perhaps, is you don't have the infighting that you see nowadays with the schisms in band, like Dennis DeYoung versus the rest of Styx, Mick Mars versus Motley Crue, Eddie Van Halen and Alex Van Halen versus Sammy Hagar. Sammy Hagar said that he got into conflict with the band because he had just had his first son or his first child, and he wanted some time away from the band. And Alex and Eddie said, "Oh, that's not true. He was just, he was just lazy." Who do you believe? Well, it doesn't really matter, but you don't have that infighting. When you have the schisms that destroy a band, it kind of, at least, well, for me, it takes away from that legacy. You don't have that with Rush at all. So there's a certain fearlessness about the band that also ties and cements their legacy as well. That fearlessness is not being afraid to experiment. Does it always work? No, but hey, you have to give them credit for experimenting. As much as I do not like or care for almost at all Hold Your Fire, I have to at least credit them for experimenting and trying something new, right? And then, of course, they redeemed themselves in my eyes because of their last 3 studio albums. So anyway, that fearlessness. So trust. If we talk about trust for a minute, and this is in Geddy Lee's biography, he talks about, let me get to the right page, beg your pardon. Okay, so here we go. So page 417 in the biography, I'm still not finished. He's talking about the Vapor Trails mixing and mastering and the headache that caused because of the compression wars and the loudness wars, as it were. And he said that he and Neil were no longer staying late into the studio. They were going home to go to their families, but Alex stayed behind. And he would disappear into the guitar tracks playing through the night. The next morning, Geddy says he'd have the immense pleasure of hearing all his new parts, that is Alex's new parts and experiments for the first time. And that was a big change for them, especially for Geddy, according to Geddy. And Geddy says, quote, "We had to trust one another not to screw up a song when left to our own devices, or more precisely in my case, not worry the parts to death, because if you're not around while the thing is being recorded, you lose some of the right to criticize it later." So, trust. How many bands put that trust into one another in the way that Geddy describes. So that's a big factor as well, which I think helps cement their legacy. And in tying to legacy or other examples of what is Rush's legacy is just their unparalleled energy, the constant touring, to give fans what they want, that sort of thing. And of course, tied to energy is their self-energy. And what I mean by that is an artist not only has to please its fans, it has to please itself. And they do a wonderful job. And they're very fond of their craft. They're very fond of their catalog of work. Next, how cerebral the band is, whether you talk about their chops, their artistry as players, their technique, their virtuosity, their skill, their talent, but also, as I mentioned before, the songwriting with respect to lyrics and how it ties to the music itself, right? You'd always look forward to reading it when you got the liner notes, back in the original vinyl age, right? Music by Lee and Lifeson, lyrics by Peart. Anyway, there's something poetic about the band. How many bands can you say have that poetic quality, that high poetic quality that makes and instills and gives a band its legacy? And that epicness, whether you're talking about really long songs or shortness, even some of the short songs have an epic quality or feel or vibe or tone to them. And that's so unique with respect to this band. And then next is what also cements their legacy is the songs possess what's called verisimilitude, and that is the literary device or the art device where what you have in your art reflects real life. So, as I said a few times on this channel, talking about Will Romano's book, and in Geddy Lee's bio himself, he talks about how, both of them talk about how music can paint pictures. So you get that cinematic feel or theatrical feel from the band where Geddy steps into the role of the protagonist that Neil is writing about. And specifically in Geddy Lee's bio, he's talking about Ghostwriter. And in that book, that's a very personal song. Much of Vapor Trails is personal with respect to Neil because when they're recording this, they're bouncing back. Neil's bouncing back from losing his wife and daughter. He's just remarried. His second wife, Carrie, I don't remember her last name, and so Geddy has to step into Neil's role. And so Geddy talks about how cautiously he asked Neil about changing the word "I" to "you," so that they, Alex and Geddy, and then more importantly, the fans can relate to what's going on. So while the song originally and still is about, and many of the songs are about Neil's personal tragedies, we can also relate to Neil's tragedies as well. And so it becomes more open and involving all of us. So if I could quote from the book for a minute. Let's see. Geddy says, I sometimes had to push him to strive for a greater universality, had to push Neil, to allow both the listener and me into the story, to allow for our own interpretation and an emotional connection. If it didn't have a certain universality, I'd just be ventriloquizing his pain. And then he talks about Ghostwriter as an example. So that's the verisimilitude, how the story relates to everyone's life in some fashion. In this case, taking what Neil had to go through and learn from it, and then us learning about loss and dealing with loss. So, all right. With respect to legacy, Rush is one of the most, next one here, Rush is one of the most emotionally driven bands because the guys play with heart, they play with soul, they play with spirit. And you can have all the virtuosity you want, all the technique, all the skill. It's meaningless and goes in one ear and out the other if it doesn't have that spirit. Again, I use this all the time as an example. The 3-minute mark, La Via Strangiato, especially the big three would be Exit Stage Left, Live in YYZ, and Pink Pop Festival. When Alex launches into that solo, it's like his soul is in the strings and in the tone and in the movement there, that piece, in that, it's just, the quality is just there. It's like his whole being for that brief moment, those brief minutes are in that piece. And it's in all their pieces, so to speak. So emotion, vibe, tone, heart, soul, spirit, which has a gravitational pull on us. How many bands can you talk about really have that gravitational pull on us as Rush does? And so overall, Rush's legacy is so powerful and lasting because it has a uniqueness in all the things encompassing that uniqueness, which I've discussed with you today. So yes, Rush has a longevity with respect to legacy. I think it is one of the most powerful legacies of all time. It's up there with the Beatles. It's up there with the Rolling Stones. It's up there with many a band because Rush are a legendary band. They have that legacy status. We'll never see the likes of them again, I believe. But we're blessed to have had them. And we still have them because we still have their music. Thanks for watching. Take care now.